Broadcasting from Ireland, featuring interviews with some of the biggest names in magic. Welcome to the Deceive Reality Podcast with your hosts, David Peace and Steve Spade.
And we are back. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Deceive Reality Podcast after a little break that we had.
A huge break. It was a massive break.
It was a little break. What was it? Like 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was just after Paul Brook blew our minds with so much information, we just needed time to process it, I think. That and the world opened back up a bit, and we got very busy very fast.
Yeah, we got busy fast, and then it was just like, yeah, do we really have time to do the podcast as much as we were doing it when we had nothing to do? So
yeah, definitely. It's been a wild ride. We'll go over some of that stuff, some of the stuff that's been going on in magic, all that sort of stuff that we've been up to, and all that sort of stuff. We had a couple of people sending a question as well when we said we were back. So, and something that happened well before that, which I think is a good place to start, really. So we had a question on Instagram. Someone messaged us with Sinead messaged, what happened to the podcast? Well, we had a little break. But we're back now, and we're hoping to start uploading consistently and make sure that the podcast is up as much as possible. So I guess I'll leave it up for now. Talk about what happened. I guess what we've been up to since the end of the summer, really. So Steve, do you want to go over any of the sort of stuff that you've been doing since then?
Yeah, so I guess with the pandemic and the way things were, everyone was kind of adapting and kind of going virtual and stuff like that. But a colleague of mine from years ago, when I was working on Vikings, the TV show with the History Channel, approached me about working on a movie. So I was a consultant on a movie, Cocaine Bear. And then from that one, I got another movie with Netflix. So yeah, I've done a lot of consultancy in the last few months, and just kind of working kind of hands-on with some actors as well, teaching them magic, and then just teaching them a bit of kind of like psychology of magic so they can use it in some of the scenes. So yeah, it was different, but yeah, back to virtual shows now as well, and a few live shows kind of when things kind of like was in a bit of a balance, but it's kind of gone bad now again, so it's kind of gone more virtual, but more consultancy work coming up in the future as well. So yeah, it's been fun. It's been different. It's a nice kind of a segue, into something a little bit different. And maybe I mightn't have pursued it as much if the pandemic hadn't happened, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's sort of situation where you can do that consultancy, like the movie set will have all its like COVID protocols and all that sort of stuff in place. So you feel safe enough, I'm guessing, like on the sets, just talking to you while you were there. And
yeah, really,
I think it was interesting.
Good,
Yeah, because like the way you're talking about, you did the movies, but like you can't really talk too much about the movies because they're not out yet and all that sort of stuff. But like, I think it's interesting that like one of them is more classical magic consultancy, while the other one is a bit more like it's not even magic. People wouldn't even think that there's a magic consultant on it without saying too much about it, which I think is a very interesting way of getting into that.
Yeah, it really was, and it was a real challenge, man. It was a real, I think, as performers, we weren't really being tested kind of creatively while the pandemic on, because to be fair, the virtual shows can be quite easy to put together, and there's a lot of like self-working kind of material that people can just do online, and you can become a very successful magician with very little skill, I guess, through the virtual medium. But I think the creative juices kind of flowed a little bit better for me, working with like special effects guys and different consultants, and then kind of using my knowledge as a magician and that kind of stuff to kind of with them, I guess, to create something new. It was definitely a challenging kind of a thing, but I enjoyed it, man. It was a really cool kind of a eye-opening experience that I could do that style of things. But like you said, yeah, I mean, it's weird because people ask you about it, but you can't really talk about it. So on one side, you're trying to say as little as possible by saying just a bit, because I have to sign NDAs for everything as well. But yeah, no, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I know everything, so I can spill the beans. I didn't sign any NDA.
Yeah, you can spill the beans, and then they can sue you. Fucking Universal Pictures can sue you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Because I think it's interesting because it's something we say all the time that like magicians, we think differently about stuff, and like we approach problems from a different way. Mainly in like, how could we cheat this? Like how can we not do it? We create the illusion of it and that sort of stuff, which comes in very handy in special effects.
Yeah, definitely, and that's where it came from. When I got the consultancy job on the second movie, it was a conversation I had with a special effects team, and they were just kind of scratching their heads about how they would do a scene, and they were like, how would you do it? And I just kind of drew up an idea pretty quickly, and they were like, yeah, okay, we could try that. And then I had to go then to the drawing board and actually make up how it would be done, and kind of adapt some kind of sleight of hand skills and some other stuff, and kind of how people perceive magic and a little bit of psychology of magic to make the scene work. But it was nice to do, in the world of like CGI and green screen and black art being used again virtually and things. It was nice to do like a practical, hands-on, real effect. And only when I was doing it, it was one of the special effects guys, Kevin, was saying it's kind of cool that you're like Ireland's Houdini, and then Houdini did special effects in movies as well. So kind of a weird crossover again, So yeah, I enjoyed it though, man. It was cool, and it was cool to collaborate with you too, because there was days where I was like, how the fuck am I going to do this? And you were like, I don't know either, man, but we'll come up with something, So yeah, it was cool.
You need to bounce ideas off people, because when you're going through stuff, sometimes you can get caught. Sometimes even in like a logical sort of like a logical gap where you can't get out of it. Because it's like, even for me, like people might know that I'm a programmer by trade. I've been a programmer, and I get work on some of my own stuff and things like that as well. And even sometimes I've like explained something to someone, and then by explaining it to someone, I get a revelation about something. And it's the same with magic. When you're working on stuff, you can be caught in something, and while you explain the problem out loud, sometimes it's different, because a lot of times you're working in your own head, and when you say something out loud, it gives your subconscious a chance to actually like interrupt you and be like, actually, I could just done this.
Yeah, well, it's always good to kind of take. I mean, I think it's literally a sin if you buy a trick and read the instructions and do it word for word, because that suits that magician who created the trick or whatever. So like, if you don't make it your own, you're not really a magician. You're just kind of you're like a tribute actor, or like a cover band. I mean, that's the kind of
karaoke
same
magic type stuff.
Yeah, karaoke magic. You have to add your own little bit to it, and it doesn't have to be a massive thing. You don't have to rewrite it or anything or change the whole thing. You just have to give it enough of a flair that you make it your own, to an extent, And even Michael Lamar said that when we had Michael Lamar on. He was saying, if you have another skill base, if you can add it to your magic, you're going to have stronger magic. But we pointed that out a few times with different people being on the, throughout the different podcasts, and they've all agreed with it. So I think it's important, if you have something that's unique to you, if you can fuse it with your magic, it's going to be a better performance.
Because even your personality is unique. Because I think it's fine when you start off and like the first time you're performing a stage show, it's probably just going to be like, I know mine was pretty much an exact copy of Mark Paul and Luke Germain mashed together into like one show. And then, but then it's like, once you get comfortable, changes, because you add in your own tricks, you change stuff, being like, oh, they had people write down dreams, I'm going to have people do something else about themselves. It can be you can really mix it in, just change the presentation a little bit, add in your own personality, your own quirks, your own interests, things like that. Like movies are a big thing to me, so a lot of tricks I do have movies in them and things like that, which is because that's what I'm interested in. So even if the method's the same, the presentations would be completely different between me and like even when you're performing, because we're interested outside of magic, we've interest in different things.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, straight out of the box stuff. I mean, it has a place, I guess. If you're doing a lot of TV magic, like Dynamo or any magicians on TV, they're just going to fly through material. So it's very rare that they give it their own kind of flavor. They just kind of just do it straight out of the box, because they don't have time to develop it in their own way. It's just material. But I think if you're developing,
at that stage,
absolutely. But if you're developing a show. Yeah, if you're developing a show, or if you're developing your own thing and you have the time to do it, you're going to make it your own,
Yeah, because I like it. I like that sort of stuff, and I think it's the hard thing as well when you first start performing magic, is like, what is your own style? Because I think you all get inspired by people, whether it's like as a mentalist, like Darren Brown, there's like a lot of people go that route, or like Louis Laval, Luke Germain thing, which is much more mystical, and like I used to always see myself as like this dark, mysterious person on stage, and then I get on stage and I'm like sarcastic, funny, making jokes, jumping up and down, dancing on. It's just like like I'm not that in my head. I'm this dark, mysterious performer, and then I get on stage and I'm like, oh god, I'm not. Like I'm not that at all.
Yeah, so it's funny because the Amazing Jonathan says that, like, he wanted to be Copperfield and that kind of style. And he was just like, he decided that when he was starting to do it, he just couldn't be that, because he sucked at that. It's not who he was. He was naturally funny, or he was naturally, he had that charisma that only kind of he has. So I'm sure Copperfield could look at him and go, I'd love to be more like that. But Copperfield adds in loads of different, different elements of stuff in his magic. He is funny. He's entertaining. He's got all that. And I think you need that. I think if you're going to be an actual performing magician and out there performing for public, the public in general, and it doesn't matter what way you're doing it, you have to have that charisma, and you have to have, it's just not, being a good magician isn't enough, you have to, there's so many different layers. Talking about Copperfield, actually, I picked up his book, The History of Magic. It's amazing. Everyone should pick it up. It's unreal.
He was promoting that actually on, I think it was Vanity Fair's YouTube channel or something. He was doing a video about, I think it was on Vanity Fair or Lad Bible, one of those ones that do those interviews. And they had him reacting to magic from TV shows. And he was reacting to the Arrested Development one. And he was like dancing around in a flowery shirt with knives in his mouth, and Copperfield was like, "I think I'm to blame for this." It's like, I think I might have hurt the art, but it's very interesting to see him like actually being funny, making jokes and stuff, because he is quite a profound performer in what he does. One of the production
notes on one of the scripts that I was given, I won't say which, there was like, we needed to be more Doug Henning.
Nice.
So that was cool.
Yeah, that was for the Avengers 20 movie that you were working on.
yeah. I love that though. I love that as a note, like from the director. We needed a bit more Doug Henning. So I was literally just like, a lot of that. I was like, dude, actually, does he need to be actually dressed like as a hippie and everything? And they were like, no, just more, mannerisms. I was like, okay.
Fine. Yeah, you can do that. I think it's one of those things where you have. It's mad that Doug Henning still is around, especially in like the outside of the magic world. It's brilliant, to have that style of thing. Because
talking about style, this is not a style. This is Movember. Just for anyone who's like, why does Steve look like Freddie Mercury after the break after the podcast? Although Freddie Mercury is 30 years dead today, so it's a tribute to Freddie Mercury and it's a tribute to Movember. There you go.
Well, you've literally just given away that this is pre-recorded now. Like, you should have said it was his anniversary yesterday. If you were just blew the illusion that this was released on Friday.
I just ruined it for everyone.
Yeah, you ruined the magic. It would have been great. Yeah, because your clock would have made it look like we were recording this at like 6 a.m. or something. Yeah, when we're going through some of the stuff as well over the last few months, like I was back out gigging for a bit before the case numbers of the thing that won't be named went mad again, and went back. But I was out performing. It was just great to be able to be out. It was outside in like a marquee situation, being able to perform on stage with people. And it was so cool just to be able to like get back and feel that energy after doing Zoom shows for so long and having muted people being like, and you're like, it's not the same.
But isn't it? Yeah, and everyone's doing that. Yeah, I know. It's unusual as well though when you're back out there, and it's mad to see that the way like magic is being developed now. It's all like wipe clean, and it's all like hard plastic, and if you think about it, like realistically, I know some performers would say, and I there was times where you clean up props and stuff afterwards, especially stage show stuff, because you just want it to be kept immaculate for the next show. But yeah, definitely, like we definitely all handed around props to people and never thought of germs and bacteria and everything else.
100%. Even like things like you'd be using your deck of cards all night, and then you do like Win Out and French Kiss, and you're like, how many people have touched that card before I put it in my mouth? Like, but
it was a guarantee, after like the busy kind of like October, November, December time, that you'd be sick in January. That you'd either just be kind of worn out from gigging, or you just be sick because you've met so many people, and you would just kind of rule it off before. It's just like it's just part of what it is, But yeah, like handing around the same Sharpie, or like you said, putting the deck in your mouth, or putting it, in someone else's mouth, or whatever. We a lot of those effects are going to kind of die out or have to be adapted or changed now, because they're just not going to be feasible in the future.
Yeah, but you have to one of the things that Joe said in recently is about, have you bought any new magic recently that you like? And one of the things I picked up, I literally only arrived, I think, like 2 days ago, was the Pro Mind set, or the Mind Pro set, depending on what website you're looking at, by Luca Volpe, Paul McCraig, and Alan Wong. And it's really cool because it's all magic that you can do either like close up, parlor, or virtually, that can be done socially distanced, and everything's plastic, as you're saying, that you can just wipe everything down after the gig if they do touch it. But the whole idea is that nobody needs to touch your props. And I think it's just such a good idea that like we're able to do that, because I and the gigs I did, I left pretty much everything behind. I was doing like a disposable show. Like the deck of cards didn't come home with me. The Sharpie didn't come home with me. They were all left at the venue because people touched them. So it was like, okay, bye.
Yeah, no, that's you see, even just that, like you're saying, like it's a new product, and they're thinking that way straight away, which is a good way to think going forward, regardless of there being a pandemic or not. Because I mean, we all hope that the pandemic will be gone pretty soon, fully gone,
Yeah.
or the variants will calm down a bit. But I mean, it's great to think they are thinking that way. Let's make it wipe proof. Let's, instead of it just being another prop, let's just get it out as quick as possible. Obviously, Luca and people like this are thinking about what performers are doing. What are they doing close up? How are they going to make this work?
Because they're doing it themselves as well, which make it think. And also, outside of that, it just means like props will last longer because they're plastic now. So it's not like a gimmick deck that comes out. Because I haven't picked it up yet, but I was looking at Christopher's Eclipse that it is on pre-sale at the moment, which again, it's an ESP deck. It's plastic. Like I go through so many ESP decks because I use them a lot in my work, and they get destroyed just by anything that's been carried around your pocket. Maybe I used to have like 10 in my wallet for matching routine, that just for impromptu stuff, and they get tattered and grimy and stuff, and you end up having to buy another one. And like ESP decks are like 25 quid on their own, and now you can get a plastic one that will probably last you forever. The tuck case might get a bit done, but the cards themselves will be fine for years, and that's only like an extra 10 euro or so.
Yeah, I remember being in the States a few years ago, and I picked up like kind of wipe clean like bicycle cards, or like a plastic finish. They were kind of like you could use them. I think they call them poolside cards or something like that. Poolside. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a really good idea. And maybe people will adapt and try to make tricks that would only work with those kind of props. So that's kind of cool too. It might create a whole new kind of genre of Magic.
Excited deck. I can't remember what they call it. I just remember they were brown. So if you know what it is, like comment down below what this deck was, because I need to get some more of them. Because I got the one deck and it was plastic coated, but it's still handled like a bicycle cards deck. You could still do all the sleight of hand, double lives, all that sort of stuff. But it meant they were perfect. I always use them on like nights out socially with my friends, where you're at a bar and there's even just like condensation circles on the table, or maybe somebody spills a little bit of alcohol or whatever they were drinking on the table, so the table's a bit wet, and you put down your deck and your deck is instantly destroyed. But you put this down and it would still be fine. You just dry it off and it doesn't warp or anything. They were really good, because we are performing in situations where even at a banquet, the banquet cloth at the end has rings on it from people's drinks and all that sort of stuff. So stuff gets wet as you're performing.
Yeah, and especially if it's a prop that you're going to, like hand out and then try to take back or whatever. If it's get wet, that's it. You just have to go and buy a new prop or make a new prop or whatever it might be.
Yeah, if you had to pick one trick that has been killed by the pandemic, what would it be?
Nail up the nose, the human blockhead.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows how it's done now. They're like everyone from like a kid to like 100-year-old knows how it's done. It's done.
Yeah. Method exposed. Yeah, that's very true. Because I think things
like if you did it, and you were like half through, some kid would be like, "Can I do that?" They know exactly how to do it. It's completely exposed. Like so much worse than the masked magician. They just know, and that's it.
Yeah, it's disgraceful. They should have come up with a different test. But I think things like, because I used to do the I think it's eye vanish, where you put the coin in your eye and it comes out your mouth. That's gone. I ain't putting any. It was disgusting as it was to put a coin in your, have a coin end up in your mouth anyway. I used to like sanitize it and stuff before and after, but then obviously you get more relaxed maybe sometimes and do it without, which is stupid and not to be done. And there's things like that. I think even trying to get French kiss back would be difficult. Trying to get someone to hold a card in their teeth, that like nobody's going to do that. Even for years, I used to do it. I used to carry around extra cards that hadn't been in the deck for the whole routine. And then I blowed them on top, so at least I knew they hadn't been touched by anybody except for myself, and things like that. So you can do things like that with help, but you can't tell your spectator that because it's not going to work. So it's they still won't care. Like that, it's nobody's
going to be. No one's going to be willing to do that. I mean, there is times where people can be a bit standoffish doing that trick, but now there's no way. Like, I mean, if they don't want to touch a card, they definitely don't want to put one in their mouth.
Yeah, definitely. Because even one of the things I was doing was at one of my gigs, I was doing a few like non-psychic tarot readings, as I advertise them. And usually in a tarot reading, you have someone shuffle the stack and stop whenever they want and put them down. But for me, because I didn't want, I think I ended up doing like 30 palm readings or something. You don't want 30 people touching your tarot deck. So I was shuffling the cards and just having them say stop. So that way, only I was touching the cards, but they still had control over when it happened and stuff like that. So the cards still seemed like their choice and that sort of stuff. So there's definitely ways around this sort of stuff that we're all gonna have to get used to.
Like think of like the petri dish of disease that is a sponge ball. You know, you like
you mean
in
one
your
of these?
hand, it's sweaty. Yeah, there you go. You know, that was a good call. But yeah, people are holding them in their fists. You know what I mean? And then you're going to another table, and they do it again, and you know, and there's people's sweaty hands and whatever. You know, and just on a bacteria side of things, besides COVID, they're disgusting.
And it's sponge.
It's a sponge. Yeah. It doesn't get worse than that. You know. And it doesn't look like it's dirty because it's red. So, like, they're, but it's a great trick. Don't get me wrong. So many people diss the sponge balls and they say that they're crap. But no, I mean, they're such a good trick. But but maybe it'll make people who develop magic and stuff. And we've been talking to a lot of people through here as well that develop a lot of magic. And it will make them kind of segue and go, maybe we can't use that material because that's not the right material. That's going to gather bacteria or whatever. We'll make it in this or whatever, you know. But yeah, sponge balls, and there's definitely things that I've performed, and I'm thinking now, no, I can't. Like, I just can't.
It's even when I look back now, being like, you go to like a summer wedding or a summer corporate event, and you're performing probably outside 20 degrees in your 3-piece suit, melting, and like you're sweating mad. The spectators are also in suits because of whatever the event is. They're also sweating mad.
Yeah.
So it's like there's all these sweat on everything. And then it's like, the alternative is a winter gig at Christmas. And like you go into any hotel, they have the heating blasted up to like almost the sauna temperatures. So everyone's melting again. So like there's no actual.
So even just being on stage, you've got stage lighting and you've got, you know, all that. I mean, you're always warm. As a performer, you're always, it's always too warm. But yeah, you know, you're right though. But I think that's probably going to be the outcome of it though. People that develop magic are just going to have to think of that, you know, going forward. It can't just be made of that because that's the easiest or the cheapest material. It might be more expensive because it's going to be made of something that's wiped clean or whatever.
Yeah, there's one thing I was doing recently I was at a friend's birthday, and there were some people there who I didn't know, and they knew I found out I did magic and asked me to show something. And one of the things I was doing was a rub-it-up vanish, and I was just doing it on my own leg because I didn't want to interact with people. And people were immediately, do it on my hand. And I was just like, I don't really want to touch your hand because, like, if I do, well, it kind of showed me that, like, sometimes people can be a bit like that. Maybe it might come back that people will relax a bit more when they know everybody's okay and that sort of stuff. So, fingers crossed for some, because it will make it difficult because a lot of that magic, like sponge balls and all that sort of stuff, is great stuff. But especially with like runny-nosed kids, maybe not.
Yeah. Pick your audience. But I mean, recently I was at a meeting in Dublin, and at the end of the meeting, everyone shook hands, and it was surreal. It was a bit of a
what are you doing, guys?
What's going on, you crazy bastards? But I think, you know, people are social people. You know, people have to. You know, human race is. You know, we have to have that connection. That's why people are going to get depressed and stuff at the moment, because that connection isn't there, and we all need that and especially as performers, like it's a drug to us. I mean, that connection and how making people feel a certain way through an effect. That's what we do. You know, like a lot of people
I've just people want hugs afterwards and stuff. Yeah, people want hugs and like high fives, and like when you do a moving piece of magic, like. People have cried. People have like they really go into it, and like you don't just want to stand there while someone's crying, being like, "I won't touch you, stay back." You know, it's like there is a bit of that sort of stuff, and like how many methods require physical contact with the person? Like
I remember. I remember when Morgan was consulting with me, Morgan Stripper, like years ago, and he always talked about like personal. It has to be personal. You have to draw them in and have that connection, you know. And I think if that's something in magic that's going to be missing, people who perform like Morgan, he's a very hands-on type performer in that sense. And he uses a lot of different kind of like psychological readings and other stuff like that really draws people's emotions out of them. And he's not going to turn away and not hold them or something. You know what I mean? That's all part of the performance, really. So yeah, no, I actually when we had him on the podcast, we were talking about that, and the pandemic wasn't, you know, it was kind of on a slowly getting further, you know, worse or whatever at that time. And we were talking about that, and he said, remember, he was going to adapt and do other stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, because the one thing like at the moment, like all my Christmas events were cancelled, all of your Christmas events were cancelled or moved to virtual. Is the thing, and it's kind of sucks to have like be back in the virtual situation, but at the same time, as I was saying to you the last day, it's like I felt like finally got virtual show to the point that it's actually good and have a good standard, and it was like, oh, everything's back to
I
life.
bought more studio stuff than props in the last 12 months. There's more lights and more mics and more this and more that. And like
better
you're not
webcam
going,
and then a better webcam.
yeah, another webcam, and then yeah, exactly. Like we're going through, you're looking at like references and reviews for equipment where we would have been looking at them for tricks before and whatever. So yeah, it is all different, but it's fun too. It's nice to adapt. I'm being a bit pick and choosy. I was busy with the movies and stuff, so I'm being a bit more pick and choosy with the virtual shows. But I flipped the whole dynamic as well. I kind of saw what people were doing virtually, and I decided to do none of that, and I decided to go more of a classic route, and I'm actually doing like sleight of hand magic. Like if you saw me on stage, that's what you're getting in the virtual show. And I spoke to Joel Myers actually, which is a bit of a shout out to Joel. He was saying, do what you do best, just do it virtually, and he was right.
Yeah. Because the thing is, like, instead of trying to write a new show, I think it's like trying to adapt stuff that you do on stage and just figuring out how can you do it virtually, and that was an interesting challenge to try and get through it. It's still like I don't like virtual shows. I don't enjoy doing them. I think they're it's that thing for me is the reason I perform is that for that interaction with the people and a genuine connection and stuff. And I think being like you're on mute isn't the best thing to have in the middle of your big confabulation reveal and things like that.
Man, you could use it as a prediction. Just have it in the top pocket. You're on mute, or I can't hear you. I can't see you. Turn your camera on. Blah blah. Blah. Yeah, it is annoying. Like imagine it on the flip side though. Imagine like being on stage and be like, can you hear? You know what I mean? Like imagine addressing people the same way you address them in a virtual show. It'd be surreal. But yeah, you don't have. We saw a great example of a great virtual show with Darcy when he sent the link out that time. I mean, he did his full illusion show, but just did it on virtual. Just did it like a TV special. And I think
it was like a TV special. It's a great way.
There's two contrasts. There's like the small virtual show, or the people who are actually putting production value into their show, and then obviously they're getting the bigger clients.
Yeah, I think that was a really good show. It's one of the best virtual ones that I've seen. So I know like us and a lot of other magicians would either get invited to watch each other's shows or pay to see each other's shows when it was a public thing, just to see what other people are doing. Obviously, the last thing you want to do, which some people were doing, which was pissing off a lot of people, was going and watching people's shows like Colin Clouds and stuff like that, and just ripping them off completely in the
doing the show. And, but how bad is that?
Yeah.
Like you watch Colin McLeod, who's at that level, or you watch whoever's doing it, and then you do a shit version of it just because you've got no creativity, or you think it's okay just to go and all about like buying a trick or whatever. But if you take their pattern, their presentation, you're just stealing. Like it's blatant stealing. And it should be. It's hard to patent and copyright this stuff, but so many lines and gags and things I've said on TV or whatever have been stolen by magicians over the years.
Just the thing is, you don't want
lack of creativity.
If someone releases a trick with a script, it's like it's fair game because they're selling the script, which is one thing.
Of course,
but it's
and
like,
they sold you bought it.
Yeah, if you go to see their show and just rip off the lines, it's like, wait, what? You can't. Yeah. It's madness. Like it's very infuriating.
I've seen magicians at shows, and you just be like, "Hey, man, how's it going? Good to see you." And you can see them like if you look over, they're with a notebook, not even enjoying the show. They're like, "What the fuck is he doing?" And I remember doing gigs before, and I handed out notebooks, and I was like, "Just in case you don't have one, guys, just to be a bit of a smart ass." But if a line works and it works for you, doesn't mean it's going to work, for somebody else. It might work because it's in the context of what you're doing. If they just stick that line into whatever they're doing, it could just fall flat. It'll just be a disaster.
I couldn't say the stuff you say on stage because you can be quite combative and insulting to your audience members at times.
I can be. Yeah. Well, I suppose my background with that was a lot of the college gigs and comedy clubs early on, and then I just kind of tone it down for the corporate stuff. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem telling people they're not doing it right or whatever on stage.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, please don't do that. Like, I couldn't possibly.
Yeah, I've seen you cringe like on the side on the sidelines a couple of times, looking over, kind of going, I can't fucking believe you said it. Oh god, but
yeah, or just having an electric chair on stage for no reason, never for the trick, just to annoy a spectator. especially for when
Yeah.
there's a heck. Only save that for hecklers, which is a good thing to have.
Definitely.
But yeah, so that's a lot of stuff that's been up to. It's basically getting back to work and things, getting back out performing, all that sort of stuff, which was great. Then numbers went up, back into this, and we're back on the podcast. What a coincidence! The COVID cases
To be
go
fair-
up. Oh, I said the word, and
To
then
be fair, I've been busy rearing a son, and you've been busy with work and stuff. So it's not just that, But yeah, we obviously did want to. But when everything got busy again, it was very hard to get acts and stuff. But with 3 people lined up at the moment, we just couldn't get them on this week. But yeah, it'll be good. It's good to be back as well. It's good to be back doing this because we got so much good feedback from everyone who was watching, and not even that it's like a massive viewership because it's a very niche thing, but the people who watch it really enjoy it. And a few people, like 2 people, a little bit of an insider, 2 people that we've had on the show, we're working on bringing them to Ireland for some shows next year. So if you go back in the back catalogue of the podcasts, you might try to figure out who's coming to Ireland.
Yeah, fingers crossed if they can. All that fun scheduling stuff.
We'll sneak them in. We'll smuggle them in.
Because I think the best thing, because as we were saying as well, is like trying to get people, because when it opened up for us, it opened up for everyone else. So then trying to get schedules for interviews and stuff was just an absolute nightmare. And then you end up in a situation where it's like, oh, do we just do a podcast without an interview? And I think it's the right way to go now. When we have a guest, we do a podcast with guests. When we don't have a guest, we just get on and talk about stuff ourselves. Maybe some different topics. Because we have a couple of other things we want to get to today as well before we finish up. And definitely, like, I remember doing the interviews. The greatest thing for me about the podcast so far was like, oh, the viewership's going up. That's great. Oh my God, we're getting subscribers. Brilliant. And then I was like, don't really care, because to me, I'm getting like free one-on-one workshops with like some of the greatest magicians in the world. Brilliant.
Yeah, and the friendships we've made, man, and the other, it's just been great. I think it's a really good niche because it's kind of like in Blackpool as well. When you're at Blackpool, there's tons of magicians, but then there's only like a handful of performers who actually perform and talk regularly and network and consult with each other and stuff. And it's kind of like that. You know what I mean? If you're watching this and you're not feeling like you're getting anything out of it, well, then you're not listening close enough, because what you're getting from the podcast and the interviews is gold if you know what to look for. But it's not for everyone. But if you take the time,
some people spoke in code as well, so you should have to listen. Like,
yeah, exactly. But no, the feedback has been great, and other magicians reaching out saying that they watched it or they heard about it or whatever has been cool as well. So yeah, no, I'm glad we did it.
Yeah. So then going forward, some of the other stuff I want to talk about is some of the stuff that you've picked up recently, which is like literally in the last week, some staging stuff that you found, which is mad. You're probably posting stuff on your Instagram soon enough with like some photos of stuff, because it's very cool vintage stuff.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of thinking, like, aesthetic-wise, I suppose it's kind of coming from doing the virtual shows and stuff as well, and adding a bit more of your character and stuff, and not even your character, but just kind of the whole premise of what it is. So yeah, I bought some like really like rare like antique type furniture stuff and things for my show to dress it a certain style, because it's a certain genre. So it's going to be different, and I mean, that I've had custom stuff made before, like the mic stands and stuff like that. Because if you're going to use something, why go to a music store and buy a mic stand and just like, if it's part of you, why isn't it 100% part of you? And like, I always took that kind of thing from like rock bands and imagery. Like you'd never see Metallica just standing there with a mic stand that you can get in the store. It would have to be custom made. It would have to be their mic stand, So I think those kind of things, so many magicians just don't do it. But I mean, that's okay, because when I do this stuff, it makes me stand out. When you add your kind of colors and flares to different things, it makes you stand out. Add as much of your personality to your performance as you can.
Yeah, like people might see if they're watching on YouTube, my lighting is purple. If you go to my website, it's pretty purple. And like, I don't know where the purple came from, but like purple's become my thing. So even like in my clothing now, I've got purple in there. In my staging, I'm gonna have purple. I'm getting new pull-up banners made up and things like that. And it's not even like purple isn't a character, but it's a way of standing out. It's even like one thing I started doing my recent gigs is I've started painting my nails just black, because nobody else is. So, and like it's the one thing you see people like guys wearing black nails if they're dressed like in sort of like a rock goth sort of dark like that style of thing of like a D. Christopher and people like that, or those sort of people would have black nails and it would like fit in with them. But for me, I found it was like it's a juxtaposition to my character, because when people see me, I wear a lot of black with a little bit of purple and then black nails, and people look at me and will be like, God, he must be very serious, like dark performer based on the aesthetic. But then the personality and performance style is completely different, like upbeat and all that sort of stuff, which is like an interesting kind of like dichotomy I've been messing around with, getting good reactions.
Yeah, that's a cool dynamic, because they're seeing one thing and then they get something else. I think if you are kind of like what you look like, and then it's just going to be boring. There's no surprise, and I suppose as an entertainer, you're bringing them down a path. They're going to think, they're going to judge you as soon as you walk on stage as one thing, and then you're going to speak and it's going to be different, and then they're going to go perform and it's going to, and they're rating you all the way through. And I think a lot of magicians just kind of get caught up in the ego of like, oh, my trick is great, so they'll love me. But they might be halfway through the show and be like, this guy's a dick. He's good, but I just want to punch him in the face. So you have to keep that in mind. You're like, you're not going to please everyone anyway. But I look, man, there's so many clone magicians. They all look the same. The same tie, the same haircut, for fuck's sake. So it's
we
just,
all
I
have
hate
the photos, like if you go back to things, we all
like
have
to go to the one photographer and you get all this. I love that Chris Ramsey thing he did with all those generics. Fuck, man. Look, we've all done them at one point as well. Early on in your career, you don't know what you're doing, and you do the stupid stuff. But
you think this is a magician, so I'll be this, and then you're like, oh, do you know what's really cool? A red tie with a black shirt. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, crap. Everybody else fucking thought that was a good idea.
Everyone does that. Yeah. No, it's funny, but it's cool. But it takes years, and it takes years of actually performing and doing different types of shows and different events and different kind of people to become your character, to become who you are. It's not a character, actually. It's actually just an extension of yourself. Bizarro talked about that. Remember, we were like, you've got such a cool character. And he was like, this is me.
It's like, it's basically who you are turned up, I think, is like a good way to do it. It's like, I always, that's the best thing when you're hearing like professional wrestling, because I always think like the character in professional wrestling and stuff like that, it's all about like the best people are just their own personality just turned up a little bit on stage, because you can't just be a normal person when you're entertaining, because most of the times we're just boring as shit, lounging around on the couch, where I'd be just sitting down watching TV. So I can't be that person on stage, because that's not going to work. Nobody's going to want to watch that. But I think it's the interesting thing as well is that, like, while being like the upbeat people are like, I think we're both kind of sarcastic on stage in personality wise, and maybe like making jokes and that sort of stuff. But then when you switch to something more serious and you slow down and start actually giving very specific, detailed instructions, people notice that and be like, oh shit, something's going on here now, because like he was doing this thing a minute ago where he was joking with the bounce no bounce ball or tear no tear paper.
Yeah.
Or he's having a bit, but now he's like, has the person breathing in and out slowly, maybe doing like a pseudo hypnosis-y thing. And that switch in your personality and that you've gotten serious to make the audience get serious. I think that's something that's really interesting to play with as well, of like the ups and downs.
Definitely, man. I've been thinking more about that too as well. I mean, I think the best magicians aren't just magicians, they're entertainers, and they never forget that you're there to entertain, regardless of what you want to pursue, or what you want the audience to kind of presume who you are, or all that mystery stuff and all that. But like at the end of the day, you're there to entertain them, and if you're not entertaining them, then you're just stroking your own ego. But look at Darren Brown. Like, Darren Brown is a brilliant entertainer. He's funny. He'll crack jokes. But he'll still blow you away.
A magic trick. And like, take the magic stuff out of the show. It's great.
Yeah, you're watching the show, and as you're watching the show, you're like, this is hilarious, but he's fooling the shit out of me. I mean, I don't know how he's doing any of it, And that's what you want. There's no point like people seeing you on stage and then they're going, that's why I was really reluctant to do the virtual shows, because I had clients who'd see me live. I know they're going to want to see me live in the future. I wasn't willing to, degrade my show for the sake of a virtual show. And I was like, no, I was really reluctant. I just went, it took a while just to develop kind of what I wanted to be able to deliver. I suppose as a performer for years as well, and like yourself, you become a perfectionist, and you're like, that trick won't work there, so I need to move that there. And I wasn't just going to run to the nearest outlet like DeceiveReality.com or whatever, and just buy every trick that came out of virtual, because everyone was just clutching at straws, and magicians were just releasing any old thing. But when you actually start boiling it down, be like, no, let's take this trick and now change it completely on its head, would say, and make it a virtual trick or whatever. I mean, I've done tricks that I did virtually that I thought I would never do virtually. I was like, that's not going to work. Even so much as like picking a handcuff, or picking a padlock. And I've done them as like challenge things with like Q&As with different people and stuff, and they've just been asking me about escapology and things. So that's another whole side of things that you can kind of teach and train that way. And some of the consultancy was done like that too with some of the actors, because they weren't on set at the time, so I was able to talk to them virtually and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's a great medium. It's very cool. I was talking recently to Andrew Basso that we had on the podcast as well, and he was just saying the same kind of thing, that it's so cool to think we can do this now, that this is such a huge medium that we can do this. Imagine like if Houdini saw this and he'd be like, people are doing like handcuff escapes on Zoom. What the fuck is, you know what I mean? It's just it's mad. That's like a trick in itself. It's like a whole thing that you can engage people.
Like, I just saying, like a lot of stuff that got released, like there was some really good stuff for virtual stuff that got released. Like the BM project was amazing. The thing Colin Cloud put out, which like just completely rethinking how stuff was approached.
Genius,
stuff like that. It's so clever. But then it's like, I know, like we've heard the stuff. We won't say who, but like we've heard it, that from companies who've booked multiple magicians and they've gotten pretty much the same show as far as they're concerned. I'm sure if we watched the shows, we'd be like, oh, they're completely different. But to the spectators, they're the same, because it's like it's a new medium, so there's still only a certain number of tricks that are out there for sale, at least, and shows that people can put together. So just being able to, like, it's like for me in real life performances, like I don't do the Omni deck for the specific reason that I know 4 other magicians in Ireland who do the Omni deck. So I'm like, and I know you do it with something that isn't an Omni deck. It's a similar routine, but it's just not the glass anymore, again, because other people are doing it. And it's like, if there's a trick that I know loads of people are doing on Zoom, I'm not going to do it on Zoom, because more than likely they'll hire somebody else, and you don't want it to look like we're all doing the same stuff.
Absolutely. No, I mean, and it doesn't take a lot of energy or effort to go into an old book, find a trick that nobody is doing. Like, I nearly said one that I'm going to be doing a lot, and nobody does it, so I'm not going to say it. But yeah, just take something that like is 50 years. It doesn't have to be like 100 years old or Houdini or whatever. Go back to like Doug Henning or those kind of magicians, and just see kind of what they were doing. Could you adapt it? Can you make it a bit more modern? And now start doing it, and then you'll be the guy who does this. I think there's nothing worse than like a magician being seen, even if they've got a good standard or a good performance piece or whatever. And then you do the show. And then they're like, oh, who did you meet? I mean, loads of people are like, oh, I met this magician or whatever. I'm like, what was his name? I just want to know, and they don't know. They don't know his name. They might. I'm like, oh, he did the thing with the glass thing. I'm like, everyone fucking does that, So I was like, you can't. There's no way to. I've been lucky, I suppose, with the Arden's Houdini thing. Is really, everyone knows that that's what I do, and that's just what it is. And the media, obviously, gave me that title. So I mean, it's just something that's stuck to the brand, I guess, or whatever. But like, you have to have something that is a bit unique, because otherwise, it was a great magician, but he had the same haircut as you, but he has you just blend in, and you're never gonna leap into where you need to be seen,
Because I always find, like, at the end of the set or at the end of a show, when people are talking to me, maybe like when I'm like about to head out to the car or head home or something, and if someone is asking me about like, oh, how did you learn magic? Oh, do you do this all the time? Blah, blah, and they're asking about me. I know I did a good job. But if they're like, oh my God, how did you get that card? I'm like, shit, the magic was stronger. They didn't care about me. They only cared about tricks. So I'm like, that's always the thing. And it's still like, it's not something that I don't think, but it's hard. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's really good close-up magicians who just do close-up, right? But I don't think they understand that as much, that They just like the tricks have to be really good because you're moving around and like 10 good tricks and you're covered. But when you're performing on stage, you have to get to a point where the rapport is so good with the audience that from that moment on, once they kind of like what you're doing, or they understand what you're doing, or they get your character, or they know that you're a bit sarcastic or funny, or you might, curse or whatever, they're going to just go along with the ride then. No matter what you do after that moment is going to be good. The magic is kind of irrelevant. You know what I mean? As long as you know it's going to work and it's a good trick, it's good to be in the show. But they're just going to trust you and go along with you. If you lose them at the start of your show, you won't win them back. It doesn't matter how good your suit is, or how fancy your watch is, or your fucking haircut. At that, you're dead in the water if they don't like you.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that, like, for me, it's something that's really only in like the last few years, really, I've been looking at trying to like make stuff my own and build it up, because it was something that, like, especially with stage stuff, because that's something I've moved towards, but it was like a slow process. And now I feel like I have my own show, and there's a bit in it where I can like sit down on stage on a chair and just talk for 5 to 10 minutes of a story that you want to build into something. And I'm like,
Powerful.
if you feel like you could do that, and like you've been on stage for 5 or 10 minutes, it's not the opening, obviously, but it's somewhere in the show, and you feel like you're not going to lose the audience. That's when you know you have it, that like the audience is actually cares about more than wow.
If you look at
actually care about the performance stuff.
Yeah, if you look at Darren's infamous show, the very first half almost is just like a Q&A. Like that's powerful to just come out and talk. I mean, one of the hardest things to do on stage is to be silent and just be still, because everyone's like go go go. But I mean, there's loads of moments in my show where I just slow it down to nothing, and people don't know. It makes people uneasy. It's a good place to spike, to do the next effect, to bring the energy back up again. Powerful. It to stand on stage and just engage with people without saying a word. Powerful stuff.
I remember I was at a comedy club in Cork that I was performing at, and I was doing a trick. I think it was something simple. Now I was just I was doing a comedy, and I said a turn one trick. So I think I just forced the card on someone and read their mind. But during
that's amazing.
Yeah, I know it's real technical stuff. But during the performance, I had them like place their hand on top of my hand, and I just stood there silently with my eyes closed, and I think I was silent for maybe like 6 or 7 seconds, which feels about half an hour when you're on stage. And afterwards, I got on stage, and there's a comedian he's an amazing comedian, but he's always really nervous, like before he goes up. But once he gets up there, you'd never know he had been nervous, and he could be like throwing up in the bathroom with nerves, and then get on stage, and he's the best every night you're there. But I was talking to him afterwards, and he was just like, "How did you do that?" And I thought he was like, "Joe, how did you read the person's mind for the card they picked?" And I was like, "Oh, it was magic." He's like, no. Like, how did you stand on stage without saying anything for so long? And I was just like, that to him was like the most amazing thing that I did in the show, which is I don't know if it's a compliment or not, but it's that to him is like just being on stage, not moving and not saying anything, and being comfortable enough to do that is something that not a lot of people have.
Yeah, and it takes a long time. I wouldn't recommend anyone just going on stage and doing nothing. But yeah, the right moment, it's powerful. If it lends to the effect, for sure. But it can even be a comedy effect, and you can just be still, and there can be a moment or whatever. There's a few bits in the show. If anyone's seen me live where I do that, I slow things right down to nothing, and just a look is enough. Then you don't need words, and all the best comedians do that as well. They all have their little moments where they just kind of tweak it a little bit, and you just think it's one way, but it goes another way. But it was good. It was good to be back out performing live for a little while, and it's given plenty of time as well to develop new stuff and new concepts. It's look, there's ups and downs to everything. You just have to kind of adapt and then try to not just follow suit leader, just kind of like run ahead. Kind of it's good to kind of step back sometimes and reflect and be like, no, this is the way it has to be going forward.
Yeah, I had a notebook full of tricks that like I wrote down during the pandemic that I completely forgot about, and I'm sure there's the others that I came up with that I thought were going to be like my next big thing that I've completely forgotten about, because in my head at the start it was going to be like 3 weeks, and now here we are nearly 2 years later. But one thing's just on the silence before we moved on. One thing that I think is really cool, and the best place to use it actually is in a magician in trouble effect. Whether you're doing this close-up, parallel, or stage, you see so many times when something that I used to do all the time, it drives me mental, especially when I look back at old videos of myself doing a magician in trouble thing, and getting out of trouble very quickly. So you're like, oh, that's not your card. Now it's your card. And now it's like,
Yeah.
What? Are you sure? And it's like you just take, because if you'd really mess up the trick, you'd be like trying to replay in your head that you did all the moves correctly. So in my head, I start replaying all the moves that I have to do to get to the trick, even though I know like I'm still in control and stuff. But it's like, it's that sort of stuff where you actually want, if you want someone to actually think you messed up, you gotta make it uncomfortable. And I think that's the thing. People don't want to be uncomfortable, and I think it's awful to be in it. But when you're in it, you can like.
Because like even if they were like, oh, I don't believe what he's doing or whatever, and they're a bit skeptic or they're a bit of a heckler or whatever, if you're able to make them uncomfortable, they're thinking, oh my god, if I was doing that trick and it was gone to shit now, what would I do? And that awkwardness is brilliant. And if you can pull it back, then you'll win them over, which is great.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look at Tommy Cooper.
You want to feel sorry,
Cooper, like, for Tommy Cooper to be so bad, he had to be really good, because otherwise, 100%. Where was the contrast? So, like, he was able to do all those tricks perfectly. Of course he was. But he was like, everyone can do those tricks perfectly. What's going to make me stand out? And that's when he obviously developed his character. But his like, it's gone wrong were great. Like, you really thought they were gone wrong. And then some other times he would throw the prop off the stage. It was great.
Yeah, because you couldn't tell if it had gone wrong or was he going to ever make it come right again.
And that was great. People guessing. And that goes right back to not just a magician, he's an entertainer. He's there to entertain.
Yeah, 100%. And then just go through some of the other stuff that we've had on the list before we went out. Is some of the other stuff that's come out recently that we've picked up. So there was a thing where Plasma's from the lighter by Nicholas Lawrence that was going to be stopped being sold, so we both picked up that. So that's something that we have here, which is a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing just to have, I think, because
very cool.
There's definitely so many routines you can do with it, and like I needed a lighter in my set anyway for some other effects. So if I was going to have it, I might as well have one that does a trick as well at the same time.
Yeah, when we met Nicholas at the lads convention, I mean, the creativity just kind of flows out of him when you're talking to him, you know. So for him to come up with something like that, I wasn't too surprised, because it's such out of the box thinking. But yeah, really really cool effect. When we talked about it initially, I hadn't heard about it, and you told me about it, and I was like, yeah, that's very cool, and it fits. You know, some things. I was at an auction recently, and the only thing I bought was a flick knife. So that'll just tell you what kind of an act you're about to see going forward. You know, when you're buying weird antiques and flick knives, you're not buying props anymore.
So I always like that thing of the knife going through the block. I always love that trick, and it's like going through the matchbox or the deck of cards and the block. I always love that trick. So it's cool having one that's not a lighter now, which is going to be very cool. And then so that's one of the things we got to answer Joe's question again. That have you bought any new magic that you like? And the thing that blew me away the most, and probably blew a lot of people away in the magic community the most, is something you don't have, but I've talked to you about it because you don't really do apps, but I do a lot of apps, is Cognito by Lloyd Barnes and Murphy's Magic.
I read it. It sounds great. It really does.
Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. It's like, for people who don't have it, it's a trick that I think there's a magic group on there for Cognito, and it's the group itself is just like some of the best magic community that there's there, because like we've all been in the magic cafe or magic groups where people have been quite snarky to each other, sarcastic, taking the piss, but this is just like a super supportive group where people like
all those guys live in their basement with their mother.
Yeah, but
they're like Norman Bates fucking magicians.
But if you look at this actual like group, the trick got released, and it's like you can use a photo gallery to be able to force stuff and all that sort of stuff. Or originally it was at the peak, it was like a peaking thing, but it's like evolved through people's suggestions. Some of it wasn't even like actual technical updates. It was just purely, this is a way we can use it in a different way. And there's like hundreds of routines that have been uploaded that you can download and install on the app. It's absolutely just such a cool thing, and it's something I've really enjoyed performing as well.
Something I picked up was Snaps by David Jonathan and Dan Harlan. They're very cool, and there's a lot you can do with them, and not just virtually or whatever, but like the premise is such a good, clever, you know, if you want to hide it, paint it red kind of a thing. It's very, very cool and very clever. So yeah, everyone should check those out. And it's another one of those things. It's one of those things that they teach you lots of tricks, but really your creativity can really dive into them and be like, okay, I can do this. Only today, actually, I picked up a prop that would work with the snaps. And it was just because I was in an antique store and I saw this thing and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I love that. I love effects, or they're not even tricks, I guess, really. They're more like a tool that will make something else better because you're using that tool, you know?
So I remember when snaps came out, I'd already bought, like, I've multiple gallery decks. So, and I had the MSP deck and things like that. So I was like, oh, it's a photo. Like, I know it's a different photo deck because it's got like the alphabet thing to it. So I was like, oh yeah, it's pretty cool. But I was like,
Yeah.
I have that one, so I don't really want to have two, because I use the gallery deck all the time. But then after watching you play with it, I have one that's on the way. So it's definitely, yeah, it's definitely something that's going to be very useful. I'm getting it for Christmas, so.
Cool.
But it's a surprise.
You'll be able to spell out like "Thanks, Santa."
yeah. I'm getting it from Santa, so
cool.
That's pretty cool. That it's going to be one of those. Again, that's one of those things where it is not just a trick. It is a tool. You know, that comes across the whole line that's in every Magic trailer. This is limited by your imagination. You know, it's like. Some of them you need a pretty good imagination to think of something else to do with that trick. But with the snaps, it's like, I think it was something that we were talking about for corporate events and things like that, being able to spell out stuff like company slogans, or you're performing at a wedding and get the couple's names, and like you can do whatever you want, or like have some stuff hidden,
and there's so many
suggestions and stuff.
Oh yeah, there's so many suggestions on the DVD. The download that you get with it is phenomenal. To be fair, they literally have gone through everything. But then there's like this open forum as well on Facebook where when you buy it, there's a code or whatever, you can join the group. And like, to be fair, Dan and Dave, every now and again they've just put up another trick or a concept or an idea that someone else had or whatever. And then when you see that, it'll spark a little bit of something, and you'll be like, oh, I could do it this way, and you could do it as a hotel. You know, there's numbers and shapes and animals and things, so you could do it as like a hotel number or whatever it might be, or a phone number. You know, there's so many cool things you can do with it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's really cool. And just yeah, that's good. Like, yeah, to go through the stuff we've talked about, like the plasma, I really like. I don't think it's on sale anymore. I really like the Pro Mindset. The props come of great quality. There was a clothespin in mine that they break pretty much instantly, but it's a little clothespin that you don't need. I wasn't going to use it anyway because I use something else for what that was going to do.
Okay.
So it didn't bother me, but it's just something that happened to mine. But it's a small close bike. It doesn't really matter. It's not anything. It's not required for the tricks basically. And it comes in a really cool zip bag I have here. So it's like it comes in this, which I've now put pretty much the rest of my close-up set in there. I put the Stroop test in there. I've got like Beep Wave in there. I've got like so many different things. So like I could just bring this, and that's like 4 hours of material or something at this stage. So it's great to be able to have something that's
man. I've done gigs. I've done gigs with other magicians, and they'll bring in like a fucking flight case of close up and not go near it all night and just leave it in the corner. And just like, why? Like, what the fuck?
I remember showing up to a gig and someone was like, "Oh, do you need to go somewhere to get ready?" And I'm like, "I am ready. Like, I have a deck of cards and post-it notes and business cards. I'm good to go." You can just really fly through it. But yeah, I definitely think that's great.
Dan Harlan had a great series of those DVDs and videos years ago as well. The Pack Small, Play Big. I mean, the stuff in there, his whole thing was to get a show into a briefcase. But, you know, it is possible. I mean, it's the performer. Like what we said, you know, if they like you, they're going to like your magic.
Yeah, that's the thing for me is like, I only bring stuff that can fit on me to a gig, and I don't want my pockets bulging because like we've all done that where we bring every trick we have to the gig just in case. To the point like as an experiment, I tried to see like how little I could bring to a gig and get away with it. And like I think it was one gig I was doing a while. I'd bring business cards, post-it notes, and a deck of cards with Sharpie, and that was my thing, and a peak wallet, and that was what I was performing with. And then one gig I forgot the deck of cards, which was so weird. I showed up at the gig and was like, oh crap, I literally like put it down on a chair as I was leaving the house. But it just shows you have all the stuff, and it was actually one of the best gigs I've ever done. And like I got like rehired by that company like for 3 or 4 years in a row. And it was all that first time I showed up, I had like nothing on me pretty much. And it was just like business cards that people with a Sharpie for 20 people for 2 hours, and you just go. Like.
I can't tell you who it is unless I ask him, and if I bring him on, then we can talk about it. But he told me that he did a gig for a company, and he had all the bells and whistles, all the gimmicks, everything, right? And it was like a good gig, whatever, and he was happy with it. But the following year, he got booked again. But he just forgot everything. He literally grabbed the wrong bag, he was telling me, and he rang to get the bag, and he couldn't get it in time or whatever. So he literally had, like no cards and just bits and pieces. So I think he kind of made an impromptu set type thing of magic, like stuff that I could do impromptu magic. We all know impromptu tricks you can do on the dinner table kind of thing. So he did a gig like that. And when he went to get paid or talk to the organizer or whatever, they're like, "Oh, you're so much better than the guy we had last year." And it was him. He was like, "Oh yeah, thanks so much, thanks," because that's always awkward when you're like, you're better than the other guy, because like, yeah, sure, we all do the same. We do card tricks, like we're not curing anything. Like if we were any good, COVID wouldn't be a thing. So, but yeah, it's funny that he was like they didn't see any difference. They just saw it as, oh, he was able to do magic with everything, and that's what a magician would do.
And he's done an autopilot at that stage too. Like, I think it's something that like we try to keep out of it, but it can happen, especially like during the Christmas season, where you're doing like gig after gig after gig after gig, and you're doing like your sets, and like you on autopilot a bit with the routines at like the 12th table of the night or something like that. But if you're performing stuff where you have nothing, and it's like jazz magic where you're just looking around and picking stuff up, you'll be more like on it as you're going, because you can't not be in the moment, You can't be like thinking, "Oh God, I can't get home now," and like light the fire and maybe have a whiskey and relax for the evening. You're like, "Oh, thank God it's the last table. I have to do the same routine like again, and then I'm done for the night." It's all stuff that you're in the moment, and you'll be more engaging with the people.
Yeah, I think so, man. Like, look at people like it wouldn't be really impromptu. Like, they'd still have tricks on them and stuff. But like Eugene Berger and people like that, were able to kind of climatize to the environment that they were in, and then make that the magic, and I think that's really cool. And people love that. I mean, how many times have you had dinner with friends and family, or friends of friends or whatever, and you end up doing like 2 hours of close-up magic after the meal because you're just chatting and you're just doing magic, It happens.
Style of it is so good.
And then normally you don't have stuff, but that just comes from a wealth of knowledge and stuff, and not overlooking kind of impromptu magic, because that's really important. Like if you get stopped on the street or something and people are like, "Oh, can I see a trick?" and the worst thing to say, like, "I've nothing on you," because why would you have anything on you? You're a magician. You should just be able to do magic. That's the whole thing. Like,
because I never had that, because like
never
before the pandemic, I always had at least a coin. I wear rings so I can do ring magic at any time. Now I have apps on my phone which you can like fry people with. But like, even if I did, like, the one time I was like I was in Las Vegas at a swimming pool, and someone was like, "Oh, you do magic? Do something for me." And I was like, "Okay." And there was drinks next to me, so I picked up 2 straws and like did something with the straws. I made an ice cube vanish. If you're sitting at a pool, it's very easy to make an ice cube vanish. You can ditch it into the pool. So like, you just do a false transfer and then drop your hand into the pool and it's gone.
Drop it into the pool.
Yeah, dropped it into the pool. It worked so cleanly. You're just like, "Oh, watch the ice cube here, watch it there. It's gone into the pool behind them because everyone's watching here. It's gone. It's just the best vanish in the world." You should
be consulting for some of those TikTok guys now. But like, vanish an ice cube, lads. It's simple. Just hold it long enough in your hand.
Yeah. Just be like, "I'm going to turn this into water. Watch, and it's water."
Just come back to me in like a minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah. If you're ever in that situation as well, for people, just to kind of give them examples now. So someone, let's say, they know no magic, impromptu. 2 things that they can pick up that anyone can do anytime, anywhere. Number 1 is the pinky thing, which is on Penguin Magic, where it's you make your little finger disappear, and that's Nick's trick. Yeah.
No, I'm not going to do it because I'll do it on a bad angle, and it'll be fucking terrible. I won't do it.
You'll expose the method. So that's brilliant. I really like that. And the other one then as well is what I can't remember what it's called, but it's the there's a trick where you can break your baby finger. What's that called? It's the freak. Yeah, absolutely.
Great trick.
That's such a good trick.
Great trick.
That's one that I do constantly as well. I'm double jointed as well, so it's easier for me. But anyone can do it. It's
a great book as well. It's an old one, but the Amateur Magician's Handbook. It's a really small paperback book. You get what's his name? Graham Hay, I think. I don't know. Don't quote me. But I think. But the Amateur Magician Handbook. There's a whole chapter. There's loads of good magic in it, but there's a whole chapter to impromptu magic, and there's all the classics are under the salt shaker to the table and all the good ones. So yeah, that's a great one. And like to see magicians like throw those into sets, powerful tricks.
Yeah, it's definitely worth learning body magic as well, because again, like if you're at the side of the pool, body magic is perfect. Where like there's things where like people can't lift their hands off their head, or people can't like even we were looking at a kid's magic set the other day, and there was the bar bet where you're leaning up against the wall and you can't lift your other leg. Like there's so many things. There's a book called Body Magic, actually. If you search body magic book, there's a book on it. It's full of amazing body magic that you can do, where it's just there's some stuff in there where the spectator is like, you can use a pseudo hypnosis demonstration to make it look like someone could do something, couldn't do something. There's a perfect one, actually. It's actually stuff I use this in my stage show. But if it's on Scam School about those energy bands that they were saying, the magnetic bands. So it's like a con thing where you can make people lose their balance and stuff. So you've seen me do that on stage, where it's like where I do a strength thing. But those things are perfect things to do when you're caught impromptu. Like there's so much stuff out there with body magic that just absolutely kills.
Yeah, no, it's a good time of the year as well for people who are into magic and stuff. You're always getting, I mean, every time I'm doing a gig or something, someone will be like, oh, I'm going to get into magic, or, you know, I'd like to do what you do or whatever. And you try to redirect them. I had a guy recently contact me, and his son is getting married in a year's time, and he's the dad, and he's the best man for the son, which is kind of cool because he's the dad. But he wants to like surprise them with a magic trick, and he was like, can you teach me something? So we were talking back and forth about like what he could and couldn't do. We're talking like a 70-year-old man. So I was like, I don't want to like, yeah, you just need a couple of straitjackets and whatever. You know, I just wanted to be kind of an MC kind of a piece. But yeah, I mean, it's cool getting requests like that. And if you can help, you know, they're all going to be like, I knew my dad my whole life, and I didn't know he did magic. You know, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
To surprise them on the wedding day. But yeah, things like that. I mean, this is a great time of the year. I mean, I remember as a kid always getting magic sets, always getting magic books at Christmas. And then
it's a great present to get people like this. You can just keep people entertained for life. I think it's like it's perfect to get for people like
shout out
you can get them in the shops.
Yeah, to Marvin's Magic, actually. When we had Marvin on, like you won't get a better prop than Marvin's Magic. So like anyone watching this that maybe have kids or whatever that want to get into magic, start with Marvin's Magic. There's some of the best stuff out there.
Because the Marvin Magic, it's the instructions. Because I got a magic set the other day. It's down here. We were looking at it recently, but it's like a magic magician or something. But like the props are very poor quality in it. The instructions have no images. All the descriptions of the tricks are no more than 4 lines long. Usually 2 sentences but 4 lines on the thing. Like you have all these props. I looked through them. Picked the props that I'd try and find the instructions. Couldn't find any instructions to do with that specific prop. So you never get out of Marvin's. Like Marvin's will teach you what you need to know. You know, it's absolutely. You get videos now. You get online instructions. But even if it is just a booklet, there'll be photographs of like what you're meant to do.
Yeah,
it's so important.
But even the best books like Mark Wilson's Full Course in Magic, you know, that big thick book that we all have. The illustrations are great in that, and it's an old book, but like you can understand exactly what's happening by the illustrations. I mean, obviously it's great to have downloads and tutorials and stuff now. Of course it is, but you know, a book. Yeah, we have tons of old books, and you can dive into an old book, and if it has a good illustration, you always have that, like, you know, Fig.3, you know, and Fig.4. God knows what that means, but there's loads of little ones where it's just like a hand, you know, all that kind of stuff. And
that's a good
point. Yeah. So they're all great, and it's one of those opportunities as well where you can perform something that isn't in your set, but you know how to do it. You'll just throw people off because they'll be like, he's doing magic with everything now. He's picking up glasses. He's doing this. He's fixing this. He's doing that. You know, it just becomes more of a magic experience. You're not just a guy doing tricks. You're actually a magician to them at that moment.
You can do whatever you want. So that's really good. And I think we've gone over the hour. We were going to do a short one today, but look what happened.
Talking loads.
Yeah, talking loads of shit, pissing off everyone. What we'll do is before we finish up, just give a couple of shout outs as well if you want to learn magic. One of the best things from the magic I've learned, I didn't even have to buy it because it's free. Go on to Scam Nation and check out some of the stuff that Joe Diamond was doing on Scam Nation. There's a trick, you can watch it by Brian Brushwood's reaction. Absolutely fried him. There's some great
Joe Diamond has fooled me twice in the past 3 weeks, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, it's not good. And then also big shout out to Jonathan Goodwin, who was on the podcast. It's good to see that he's doing a bit better, and some of his posts on Instagram. So that's really, really good news. I
saw a post the other day that he was back in the UK and he was eating English biscuits, and he seemed pretty happy with himself. So best of luck, man. Get well soon.
Yeah, it's absolutely perfect. And so we'll finish it up there for today. An absolute rambling, nonsensical podcast, but hopefully people enjoyed it anyway. And we will be back, and we have some interviews coming up in the next few weeks / months. We're still trying to tie down dates with people, but keep an eye out for them. Make sure, if you haven't already, hit the like button on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. We're at like 75 subscribers. It'd be great to get to 100. So if people can just subscribe, something like 25 more that we need to get us to 100 subscribers, which we'd really appreciate. And also, if you listen to Spotify or iTunes, anything like that, make sure you subscribe and follow the channel, just to make sure that helps us get to the boost out. And we really appreciate all the help, and it also helps us get in the best guests we can, because the more that we can have an impact, and that the people that listen, the more people who want to come talk to us, and we really appreciate that. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, these are just our opinions and stuff like that, but we're not here to kind of just keep everyone happy. I mean, if something needs to be said, it'll be said. So yeah, I'm definitely that one. I know Dave is a bit more PC.
I'm just such a nice person, and Steve's an asshole. Like, so, you know, it's just yeah.
It's the mustache, man. It's the roots of it have gone into my brain.
Yeah. I'll get ostracized from the community just for knowing you, but you know what you're gonna do.
Don't worry about it.
Perfect. Thanks everyone.
Cool, man.
Follow us on Instagram at David Peace Magic, at Steve Spade Magic, and at the Steve Reality as well, everywhere on Facebook and Instagram. So we talk to you all later, and thanks for listening. Bye.